London did not change because of compassion or kindness, but because fear finally gripped the hearts of those in absolute power. When the overwhelming stench finally reached the corridors of influence, the wealthy elite realized they could no longer ignore the problem. The city was forced to take immediate action, realizing that the very air they breathed had become a silent, deadly enemy. And the monumental thing that was eventually built deep beneath the ground would go on to save millions of innocent lives. The ultimate solution to London's devastating crisis was hidden beneath its streets, waiting for a brilliant mind to bring it life. After the event known as the Great Stink, London could never return to the way it was before the crisis struck. Businesses across the city ground to a complete halt as customers refused to venture out into the toxic, smelling streets. Parliament itself was effectively paralysed, unable to function as the stench from the river made their chambers impossible to inhabit. The global prestige of the entire British Empire was suddenly under threat, humiliated by its inability to manage its own waste. This was no longer just a problem for the poor and destitute. It had finally become a problem for the powerful. The stench did not discriminate between the slums and the palaces, forcing the aristocracy to confront the reality of their city. The river had turned into a biological hazard, a flowing open sewer that poisoned everything and everyone that came near it. Desperation filled the streets as people realized that their great city was slowly drowning in its own filth and neglect. It was a moment of absolute crisis that demanded a radical solution, one that had never been attempted in history before. Civil engineer Joseph Bazalgette was given the impossible task, a mandate that would define his career and save the capital city. His mission was not to beautify the city, but to prevent it from collapsing under the weight of its own waste. He realized that the solution required controlling the tides and gravity to wash the city clean automatically and efficiently. And the massive infrastructure that needed to be built was something that no citizen would ever truly see or appreciate. He envisioned a complex network that would intercept the waste before it reached the river, diverting it far downstream. His vision was bold and expensive, requiring resources that the government was initially hesitant to provide for such a project. He fought tirelessly against bureaucracy, arguing that the cost of inaction would be far greater than the cost of construction. Finally, permission was granted, and the greatest engineering challenge of the Victorian era was about to commence beneath the streets. Hundreds of kilometres of underground brick sewers were designed, creating a labyrinth that would stretch beneath the entire bustling metropolis. Labourers worked in incredibly dangerous conditions, risking their lives daily to lay the foundations of a cleaner, safer future. They battled against deep mud, raw sewage, and unstable ground, turning the chaotic earth into structured, flowing tunnels. The air down there was often toxic and suffocating, yet the work continued relentlessly, shift after shift, day after day. Every single brick was laid with precision, forming strong arches that were built to withstand the immense pressure from above. The massive construction project dragged on for many years, disrupting the city but slowly weaving a new web of life. Few people understood the true importance of the project at the time, seeing only the disruption and the mess it caused. It was truly one of the largest and most complex engineering projects in the entire history of the modern world. They reclaimed land from the river itself, narrowing the Thames to increase the flow and flush the waste away faster. Giant steam-powered pumping stations were built to lift the sewage and send it on its final journey to the sea. As the final bricks were laid, the system quietly began its work, changing the destiny of London forever without fanfare. There was no grand celebration or massive parade to mark the completion of the sewers that saved the city. There were no immediate monuments erected for the engineers, as the true victory was buried deep beneath the cobblestone streets. But the terrifying epidemics of cholera and typhoid began to fade away, disappearing from the daily lives of the citizens. The water became cleaner and safer to drink, ending the cycle of poison that had plagued the population for decades. Life expectancy began to rise significantly, as the invisible killer that had stalked the city was finally tamed and controlled. The city began to breathe again, free from the miasma that had choked its potential and killed its people. The river returned to being a source of life and commerce, rather than a flowing graveyard of waste and disease. Parliament resumed its duties without fear, and the business of running the largest empire in the world could continue uninterrupted. It was a silent victory, a triumph of engineering that worked quietly in the dark to ensure the light could continue. The visuals you are seeing in this documentary are based on meticulous research, technical drawings, and historical construction records. We have analysed the original construction documents to ensure that every brick and arch is represented with absolute historical fidelity. These images are not mere fantasy. They are a digital resurrection of the actual plans that were drawn by Bazalgette. Artificial intelligence does not invent this history. It reconstructs what time has left behind, bringing the faded past into focus. It allows us to see the scale and complexity of the work in a way that static photographs simply cannot convey. We aim to show you the grit, the texture, and the reality of the Victorian underworld exactly as it was. This reconstruction helps us appreciate the sheer magnitude of the hidden world that supports the modern city we know today. However, reform came too slowly for many, and thousands of innocent souls perished before the first brick was ever laid. Countless families were destroyed by disease while the government debated budgets and politicians argued over the cost of the project. The poor were the last to benefit from these improvements, living in filth long after the wealthy areas had been cleared. But for the first time in history, the city was being built to actually serve the needs of human beings. It marked a turning point where infrastructure began to be seen as a right for all, not just a luxury. The Great Stink had levelled the playing field, proving that public health was a shared responsibility that connected every single citizen. Modern London is built directly on top of what Bazalgette and his army of labourers buried deep within the earth. Those invisible tunnels are still functioning today, a hidden testament to Victorian engineering that no one can live without. In our next episode, we will explore London at night, diving into the world of crime, police, and survival. This is Victorian London, rebuilt from below. Join us next time as we uncover more secrets. This is AI Historical Revival.